Good afternoon. This is Howard Wiig, host of Code Green, a subset of ThinkTech Hawaii. Our subject for this afternoon is Let There Be Light, and specifically lighting efficiencies. The lighting sources just keep getting better and better and better. We are in the midst of not an evolution, but really a revolution. And here to describe that with me is Dexter and Van Kumano, President and Vice President of Illuminetix. And that's a local lighting firm. These are local boys made good. Dexter, why don't I start with you? Give a little background on how you started this business way back when and how it evolved into Illuminetix.
Well, Howard, about 22 years ago, I was fortunate to get a job with the largest lighting manufacturer in the world. That's Philips Lighting. And I had worked for them for quite a while. Then I also had the rare privilege of being able to work with some highly respected men in the lighting industry, Peter Dawson and John Hunt with Sunburst Design. So I worked with them for a little while. And an opportunity came up for me to do something more on my personal time and personal level. And I felt it was unfair to be working for someone and being, wanting to take off to do my personal business. So at that time, Van also, who was working in sales, was looking for a change in a career. So we started our own lighting agency called Illuminetix. That was about 7 years ago.
And are there any other family members involved in Illuminetix?
Well, aside from the two other full-time employees, yes, actually Van's wife Natasha and my wife Jamie also work part-time in the business, handling special events and also accounting for the business.
Yeah, and I've learned that whenever you stage an event, there are two lovely ladies behind the desk, and they just happen to be the wife and the wife.
Yep.
So very good family business. Van, why don't you give a little background about yourself, where you're a local boy made good, and you were educated where?
Well, I went to Kaiser High School right in the east side of Honolulu, and I started right out of high school. I worked for another family business for my uncle and my auntie. We were selling car wash, detailing equipment and supplies to all the local car washes and used car dealerships on Oahu. And I did that for over 11 years. And driving around a big truck, merchandising all of this heavy equipment, at the same time. So when my dad started Illuminetix, I started with him and been doing this now for a little over 7 years.
So did you kind of learn the lighting business on the fly? Or?
Yeah, I kind of did, but it made it really quick. Lighting is not an easy thing to learn at all. And you can kind of see that now with all of these guys trying to jump into the LED game, and they don't have any experience. But I was able to learn it really quickly because my father's been in the business so long. We worked in a small office together, so I was able to ask him pretty much any question I wanted to, and because he was in the business for such a long time, I was able to get those answers relatively quickly and easily without having to do too much research on my own, and being able to progress that way to learn.
Yeah, that is a huge advantage. You're bringing up memories where I'm with the state energy office, and so vendors with energy efficiency products tend to somehow find their way to my door. And for a long time, this is maybe 3-4 years ago, it seemed like every other day I would get another knock on my door, and it would be another LED company. And from China, Korea, the mainland, Europe, wherever. And as I asked them questions, I very quickly ascertained that they knew very little about what in the world they were selling. So I would caution them, and something I cautioned them incidentally about was there are some really good LED products out there, and this is something you'll cover. I think there is some junk out there. I got quite a few complaints where people would screw in LEDs that are supposed to last for 50,000 hours, and boom, they went dead after 2,000, 3,000 hours. What's going on here? So I would always say, make sure that your product has been tested by the U.S. Department of Energy, and we'll get into those details in a short while. Dexter, why don't you give us a little history of the evolution of lighting, or I would say more like the revolution of lighting for the last 20 years or so?
Well, there have been many, many changes, Howard, over the last 20 years. I mean, I've been in the industry 22 years, but there have been people who have been in this industry a lot longer, and they know a lot more about it than I do. But what I've been able to see in the last 2 decades is changes in leaps and bounds. I mean, say 15, 20 years ago, everyone was jumping on the compact fluorescent bandwagon and the halogen bandwagon. You know, 20 years ago, a screw in CFL, which, by the way, is an invention of Philips lighting. You know, those things used to cost over $20 a piece. But with the high energy costs, at that time it was only 10 cents a kilowatt hour. With the energy savings and the long life that could be achieved, it made it well worth that cost to purchase a compact fluorescent. And it's the same story with the halogen product as well. You know, you could get that punch of crisp white light from a halogen product in certain applications, like say for retail and jewelry stores or something like that, or even high ceilings, that you couldn't really get from an incandescent product or even a compact fluorescent.
And, you know, in more recent times, a lot of the driving force behind all of the change is not really just the technology itself, but it's also federal legislation. You know, the Department of Energy, the Energy Independence and Security Act, they all have these new rules that they've gotten into, you know, into the legislation and gotten passed, so that it's kind of, you don't want to use the word force, but that's basically what it is. It's forcing people to make that change. But what it is really doing too, it's helping the manufacturers to really push along what they've been trying to do, invest more money into the technology so that they can, you know, further that along too. So, for instance, you know, we're all used to using the regular incandescent A19 light bulb, the one that you use in every table lamp and in every household fixture, you know, forever. But starting in 2012, the most common one, the 100-watt A lamp, was no longer available. The manufacturers in the U.S. could no longer produce it. We could still sell it if we had it, but we couldn't make it anymore. And then it was a progressive you know, implementation of those laws. So in 2013, the 75-watt was done away with, and then earlier this year, the 60-watt and the 40-watt was also done away with too. So now if you're not already using compact fluorescents, which most people in Hawaii I think were already doing because of our high energy costs, now you would kind of have to make that change. You know, there's still some other things that were out there to use if you really wanted to use an incandescent, but it was more costly, but it still does have the incandescent feel to it if you still want that. But you know, now those types of rules are kind of really what's driving manufacturers to make those changes and to help, you know, the general public and businesses to make those kind of changes so that they can save energy and have better quality in their light too.
Yeah, and speaking of federal regulations, does this ring a bell with either of you? This is IECC 2015.
Well, the name does, but I haven't read that.
Okay. Well, I'm the codes guy, energy codes guy for the state, and I sit on the Hawaii Building Code Council, and as soon as we can do it, this will become state law. And part of it is, well, the energy code says that when you're building a new building or retrofitting, you have to meet different efficiency parameters. And there, of course, is a lighting section in here. And we measure in the code lighting efficiencies by watts per square foot. If you have 1,000-foot space and your allowance is 1 watt per square foot, then you're allowed 1,000 watts in there. And what this code does is generally not allow you 1,000 watts. The average space allowed here is more like 0.8 watts. And your dad and I go back to prehistoric times when the allowance was 3 watts per square foot. And we had to do it. That's all the technology that was available out there. But you mentioned the halogens there. What temperature do halogens burn at?
They're usually at a 3,000 Kelvin color temperature. It's slightly above what the older incandescents were.
And how about heat type temperature? And if that's a trick question, I'll give you the answer.
Okay.
It's hot.
Hot. Very hot. The incandescent lights I used to put on little lighting seminars, and you've been there, where I would turn on an incandescent lamp and I'd take an old sock, an old white running sock, and I'd put it over the lamp and say, I know this is glaring, and I'd walk off and talk about something else, and I'd hear some rustling in the front row, and finally somebody would say, Mr. Wiig, yes, your sock is smoking. I said, that can't be, that's a light source, not a heat source. And they say, I don't care, the fire alarm's about to go off. And sure enough, I would slowly unveil the sock and show it to the audience, and there was this huge black smudge just smoking like mad and smelling. So I got a little auditory thing there.
Yeah, between the traditional lighting technologies, incandescent, halogen, fluorescent, and high intensity discharge like the metal halides and the high pressure sodiums that are in like street lights and other public, parking lot type lighting. Between those types of technologies, per watt, it puts out the same amount of heat units. So 100 watt incandescent, 100 watt halogen, and 100 watt fluorescent will all have the same amount of heat units per watt that it puts out. But LEDs, on the other hand, is the only technology that it really depends on each individual manufacturer's finished product, how much heat units it's going to put out per watt. So, that's one of the other areas one of the misconceptions, I guess, if you're talking about LED, is that there's no heat. Well, there's no heat coming out the front, but there is heat coming out of the fixture, definitely. So if you're trying to do one of those complicated calculations on how much energy you're going to save on the air conditioning side of the equation in your facility, then you would have to go to the manufacturer of that LED and ask them to provide a BTU heat unit figure for you. So like I said, with the other technologies, they're all going to be the same per watt, so it's easy to figure out. But with LED, it's different. So that's one of the other differences when you're looking at the temperature of these products too.
And then what I would do, speaking of heat, is in the course of my talk with the sock, I'd say now the average home has about 20 of these things in them. Pretend that every one of them is on. At what temperature do you bake cookies? And some lady would say about 325, and then I'd get a heat gun and have somebody come up and measure the top of the incandescent. And the highest I ever got was Senator Willie Espero, and he got up to 465 degrees.
Wow.
So I'd say, this is hotter than an oven. In a Hawaii home or a Hawaii building, do we need more heat or less heat? Of course we need less heat. So all the more reason to convert, which I think largely that's another explanation for the conversion to CFLs, to compact fluorescents.
And heat was probably one of the bigger reasons too that many people migrated to fluorescent light bulbs. Although, as Van said, watt for watt, it may put out the same amount of heat. It's at least distributed along a longer linear product.
Yeah.
So with that, even those products have been affected by the guidelines that Van was talking about, where a lot of the T12, the older T12 1.5-inch diameter lamps, we can't make them. Manufacturers can't make them anymore unless they meet new standards of light output, and color rendering and whatnot. So, and even some of the newer or more common T8 lamps, people think, okay, we're changing them all to T8s, but even some of those now are having to meet new, higher standards.
Precisely,
of efficacy.
because again, I point to this little thing which will become our Bible. And on that cheery note, we need to take a brief break. Back soon.
Hello, I'm Martin Despang, and I'm the host together with the one and only Ali Yamashita, and our show is called Urban Transcendence. And urban transcendence is about identifying where we have a unique situation of a vibrant city in one of the most beautiful natural environments. So how these two can coincide, sometimes conflict, how they could find reciprocity in the 21st century is what we're excited about. And we're planning on bringing in a diverse body of guests, both from the arts and the science, and the established and the wise and the emerging generation. So hope you will join us. We'll always be on Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Thank you.
Good afternoon again. This is Howard Wiig, ThinkTech Hawaii Green Codes, where I'm here with Van and Dexter Kumano of Illuminetix, and we're talking about lighting efficiencies and all the exciting things that are happening as the lighting technology improves and improves almost on a daily basis. Just to a brief farewell to the CFLs, compact fluorescent lamps, the little curly Q lamps that most of us have. I, in my house, broke one, and I should know better. I'm in the lighting industry, but it broke, and I immediately started to go toward it, and my cat was nearby, and she was wondering what in the world that was, and I caught myself very quickly. Wait a minute, Howard, don't go toward it. Go away from it and get your cat the heck out of there too, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, when a CFL breaks, what is normally the liquid mercury turns to gaseous form, and we can inhale that gaseous form, and mercury is not good for the human body or any other body. Is that a good description, or?
Somewhat, yeah.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's one big reason why I always regarded CFL's compact fluorescents as a bridge technology. They're 4 times as efficient as the incandescent, which was great and that much less heat. But I knew LEDs were coming along, and sure enough, I think we'll all agree that LEDs are the brand new ball game now.
Well, just to clarify something about what you said, Howard, the mercury that's contained in a screw-in compact fluorescent lamp, or even the plug-ins, are very minute.
Yeah.
So it's not that you'll start to lose your teeth or lose your mind immediately. But yeah, it is a toxic material.
Yeah. They used to say that in the compact fluorescent, the amount of mercury was equal to the amount of ink that goes onto a piece of paper when you put a ballpoint pen on there. Totally minute, but mercury is highly toxic. So
Yeah, and because we live on an island, we're all very well aware of our environment. We love the ocean, we love the mountains, and people are getting more aware about toxic chemicals, not only in materials but in their food and so forth, we see on the TV. So and that's one of the other reasons why compact fluorescents have come under a lot of scrutiny, is because they do have mercury, and even though it may be a little bit, if we can get something that doesn't have any, then of course all the more better too, and especially if it's more efficient. So I think that's one of the other reasons why compact fluorescents have been kind of getting pushed aside, and manufacturers like Philips Lighting and actually all the big manufacturers are investing heavily in LED and trying to get that more well developed. And we're into our I would say 4th generation product now already with LED with some of the bigger manufacturers like Philips. So it's not something that's that new, even though it's new to most people. We're seeing products grow by leaps and bounds. It seems like we're delisting products almost as soon as we get it, because there's something better. But it doesn't really mean that compact fluorescents are all bad. They still have their place. For instance, in a home where you burn your lights less than a couple hours a day, that extra money you'd spend on LED may never pay for itself. So in those specific cases, then it may be okay to stick with a compact fluorescent. But if you're aware, like we're talking about, if something you're really well aware of your environment, and you don't want any of that stuff around, then that's understandable too, because like I said, we do live on an island. There's no place for that stuff to go. We even though the people who recycle it, there are places that can recycle these things, but we have to get it and we have to ship it back to the mainland, which is an additional cost. So LEDs, even though they are new, they have been around for a long time, just not in general lighting sources. They've been around in indicator lights on your phones and computers, and car dashboards and many things like that. Traffic signals and other technologies like that too.
Yeah, just that reminds me of when Mayor Harris was the mayor, one of the things he did was convert all traffic signals from the old incandescents to LEDs, and two things happened. He reduced the energy use by, it was at least a factor of 4, maybe 5, 6, far fewer wattages, but because the old ones were incandescents, they had to be replaced. And he had 3 crews of electrical guys who would go from light to light to light to light to light to light, changing them before they burned out. Now he's freed up 2 of those crews to do other things, which gets to another point about LEDs, namely maintenance. In commercial buildings, the guys who have to go changing lights, they don't do that for free. And especially if they have to get a ladder, set up the ladder, climb up, change, climb down, that's quite a bit of money. And with LEDs, it looks like 50,000 hours is a pretty darn good estimate for their life. The maintenance costs are really, really going down.
And
Speaking of the continual changes, I just read the other day that the U.S. Patent Office is getting way behind in processing patents. Why? All the LED improvements that are coming on. And I subscribe to 2 or 3 different LED online magazines, and all they're talking about is this company's doing research, this company's doing research, this company's doing research. And you read about the improvements that are coming on in the factory, and eventually those factory improvements are going to translate into the real world.
And that's why we see a fast-paced move toward white light LEDs, as we call it. You know, not just for the indicator lights and things like that we talked about, but for general lighting, replacements for incandescent or even compact fluorescent light bulbs. You know, that's moving at such a fast pace. Like Van said, you know, things that were coming out just a few months or a year ago have already been delisted, and you know, there's improved models out there. So, you know, things that are even more user friendly. You know, a good example of this is the screw-in LED par lamp that you would normally see in, like, say, a recessed fixture in the ceiling. They went from a multiple optic type of lamp to a single optic, so it more mimics what they call the point source light source that lighting designers used to like. And they even, most of the LED lamps nowadays are dimmable, where in the past when they first came out they couldn't be dimmed. Yeah. Some of them even change colors a little bit when they dim to mimic an incandescent light being dimmed to a little warmer color. So it gives you the same kind of ambiance, so to speak, that an incandescent light did. Say, for instance, in a restaurant at night, you know, you want to dim the lights down and do that. Yeah. Another example is the LED T8 lamps, which a lot of people didn't like in the beginning, mainly because it didn't put out the same kind of light that the fluorescent tube did. But even with these, I mean, the light outputs that we see nowadays are, you know, over 100 lumens per watt. And even with these, there have been improvements not only in the light output, but how it's used is something a little more user-friendly, where in the past you had to take out the electronic ballast, you had to change the sockets and rewire everything in a fixture, and then you could use this lamp. Well, nowadays, the improvements that have been made, with that, you can only, all you have to do is change the light bulb. You just take out the old fluorescent light bulb, you use the same wiring, same socket, same electronic ballast, and you can put in an LED tube and get some really nice light output from your fixture with things like that.
And on that subject, whenever you're dealing with bare wires, you have to have an electrician up there. Electricians are not cheap. It sounds like if all you're going to do is take out the old lamp and put in a new one, the custodian can do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another great example. And on dimming, that was an objection to the compact fluorescents also. People in their homes, especially over the dining room table, they want to have a nice ambiance for dinner. They want to dim. And say in your entertainment center, they want to dim the lights when they're looking at the TV or whatever. Now they can do that. Yeah.
I was just talking to a friend of mine this weekend, and he was saying to me, well, you know, I want to put in an LED, but how do I know what wattage to put in? Because with compact fluorescent, I knew that I would go down about 25%, and that would be roughly about the same equivalent as an incandescent. But with LED, you can't really do that. With all the different manufacturers, it's always going to be different, from one manufacturer to the next. So say, for instance, brand A could have a 10-watt par 38 LED lamp, and brand B could have a 12-watt par 38 LED lamp. But brand A with the 10-watt may be brighter. That's just how LEDs work. So we really have to stop comparing the wattage and look more at the lumens. And every time we, going back to the wattage though, every time we see a new catalog or a new price sheet from any one of the manufacturers that we work with, it's always the wattage is going down, but the lighting output is going up. And it's gotten to the point where that progresses so rapidly that I don't even save I don't even save specification sheets in my computer anymore, because you have to just go online and get the new one every time you need to send one off to an engineer or to a contractor or to a customer, because you want to make sure you give them the most updated information. So a lot of the manufacturers, what they'll do is they won't change the light output, because they still need it to be at a certain level to match what they're replacing, but the wattage can go down. So say, for instance, one day I'm going to use a 150 watt, let's just say, for instance, LED to replace a 400 watt metal halide. Well, next week, or next month, or whatever the case may be, it's still going to be the same output, but now it's going to be a 125 watt LED. So we really have to just, remember that as the efficiencies get better, these things are always going to come down, but that does not equate to the amount of light we're getting. We really have to get out of that mindset of the old days where an incandescent 100 watt between 50 different manufacturers all puts out the same amount of light. We really have to do a little more investigating to see what we really need to put into our different fixtures and situations.
Which means that the consumer has to become familiar with that term lumens. And we've been talking about efficiency. We all know miles per gallon in cars. Well, in lights, you measure it with lumens per watt. Lumen is light output, and the wattage is the gasoline, the energy input. Your typical incandescent used to, and I'm saying used to because it's going the way of the dinosaur pretty soon here, used to get about 15 lumens per watt. And when the old tubular fluorescents, the 4-foot fluorescents that went into offices many years ago and had a very dull color to them, they got about 60 lumens per watt. So that was a great improvement. And then we went from the T12s, the thick tubes, to T8s, the skinnier ones, and they went up to 70, 80, 85 lumens per watt. They kept on improving. We're now with the fluorescence up over 100 lumens per watt. And the same was true of the LEDs. They started 35, 40 lumens per watt, and that was just a few years ago. Then the standard became 60 lumens per watt. Now I'm seeing a lot of 70, 80 lumens per watt. I just saw in the store a small LED lamp, 90 lumens per watt. And then I look in the research that's going on in the factory where they're manufacturing or testing under ideal conditions, and they're up way over 150 lumens per watt already. And if you and I had been talking a year ago and said LEDs are going to be on the store shelf at 100 lumens per watt, we all would have laughed hilariously. And now it's happening. It kind of reminds me of adults who get a new computer and they say to their teenage son or daughter, look what I got. And the teenager just laughs them out of the room. Dad, that's so old-fashioned. And it's almost happening like that in the lighting field.
It's true, and that is the biggest driving force of the efficient side of the LED is how much light it can put out per watt is a lot higher than the traditional technologies. Another side of the efficiency for an LED though is also how the LED makes the light. Like Dexter was mentioning earlier, my dad was mentioning earlier, an LED is more of a point source. So on top of being able to have more light for less wattage, you're also able to direct it exactly where you need it. So if you're familiar with parking lot lighting in a traditional sense, we have this really bright pool of light right under the pole, and then it fades out as you go farther away from the pole. Well, in the past, to get the amount of light you needed between those poles, you have to put way more light than you actually need right under the pole so that it spills out and you can get enough light in between those poles. Where with LED, when you look at the photometrics of any given fixture, well-designed ones, you'll be able to see that right under the pole you're getting maybe a little bit brighter than where you're getting here, but you're getting almost as much light right under the pole as you are between the poles, and that's what's also able to help LEDs to be so efficient as well. They're able to use less wattage. They don't have to put extra light right under the pole just to get the minimums they need in between those poles, and that also helps with the efficiencies of LEDs as well.
Which leads to the, we'll shift to outdoor lighting here for a minute, the issue of safety, where our human eyes do not like to see a bright splash of light followed by darkness, followed by a bright splash of light. Our eyes are constantly adjusting, and it compromises our vision. And if you get very conscious of our old, they soon will be old, high-pressure sodium streetlights, those orangish things out there, look at it and you see a glare, and then look between the streetlights and you see a dark spot. And then you see a glare, dark spot. Whereas, as you're saying, with the LEDs, you can spread the light out in exactly the pattern that you want, so that you have what we call uniformity. You're getting almost as much light between the lights as you are directly under the pole. Which leads me to the MLO, Model Lighting Ordinance. Are either of you familiar with that?
I've heard of it, yes.
Yeah, that has to do, this is put out by the Dark Skies Association, and that has to do with exactly this topic, putting the light down where you need it, whereas if you look at the current street lights, they're going the light's going sideways, even a little bit up. And that not only is wasteful light, as you pointed out, but it illuminates the sky. One of our most important industries is the astronomy facilities on top of Mauna Kea. And guess what the main source of light pollution for them is now? It's a great big bell-shaped orangish glow over Honolulu, over 200 miles away. And when we're able to convert the street lights to LEDs and get the light down, that pollution is going to go way, way down.
Yeah, I don't know if Zuri was able to look at those slides that I left, but I had a comparison of the city of Los Angeles before and after. The city of Los Angeles undertook a large retrofit, or changing out their street lighting from high pressure sodium to LED, and the two pictures show actually a before and after from what I'm told is from about where the Hollywood sign is, and you could see a marked difference between the two, where there's less uplight or light pollution that is thrown into the air because they have gone through and changing out a large portion of their street lighting to LEDs.
This would be a good time to put these slides up, if we could. And another thing about the...
There's the before picture.
Yeah, this is Los Angeles before, and we're all familiar with Los Angeles. Here it is after.
And you can see in the foreground where they kind of like where they stopped. You can still see all the high pressure sodium back there too, and it's really a amazing testimony to what LEDs can do. They didn't turn the lights off. They're just, like you said earlier, Howard, they're just facing them down where they need it.
Yeah. And another thing about that conversion, that incidentally was 140,000 streetlights. The LAPD, the police love it because it has higher color rendition. They can see what the bad guys look like. They can identify them exactly. On a net cheery note, we need to take a brief break.
Okay, this is ThinkTech, and one of our favorite shows is Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. And it goes 4 to 5 every Wednesday right here from ThinkTech in Pioneer Plaza at the core of downtown Honolulu. And my co-host is Ray Starling from Hawaii Energy. Ray, do you like the show?
I love the show. It's great to see all the new people coming in with new ideas about how to save energy, get us off of fossil fuel, and that's what it's all about. So Hawaii, the state of clean energy. See us on Wednesday afternoons at 4 o'clock.
I knew he'd say that. Thanks, Ray.
Good afternoon. This is Howard Wiig, ThinkTech Hawaii Code Green. This afternoon I have Dexter and Van Kumano of Illuminetix, a lighting company, and we're talking about lighting efficiencies and how the lighting is getting better and better with less wattage, which means more money in your pocket. We're finishing up a talk about the LEDs and its implications for dark skies in Hawaii.
Yeah, and it's affecting us here too, because we have regulations now that require no light above horizontal for outdoor lighting, where we're trying to eliminate stray light that goes up, because what's happening is we have endangered species, New-World shearwater birds that are affected by lights that shine up. They circle around these bright lights and get tired, and they fall down and they die. So a lot of the projects that we see now, especially with utilities and municipalities and street lighting, that's a big concern, to be able to not have light pollution or stray light going up in the air. So that's been a driving force for change too.
Yeah. The county of Kauai has a thing or two to say about that.
Yeah, there's no nighttime football games in Kauai.
Yeah, much to their discomfiture. Yeah, football is very big on Kauai, so we're going to have to find a happy medium there. Yeah.
But what I've been busy with is the LED fixture side of the business. You know, we talked about the lamps and retrofit products, you know, regular screw-in things that anybody can put in. But the amount of projects that we're seeing now with LED fixtures compared to a couple of years ago is just have greatly increased. And we've been involved in a number of really nice projects with the support of local engineers, lighting designers, contractors, ESCOs, and even our network of local distributors. And the quality of light, like Van had touched on, is that you get with LED fixtures, coupled with the energy savings and lower maintenance costs, has made this a really exciting time for us to be in the lighting business with all these changes coming into play.
You know, some of the projects include some really large entities that are researching, trusting, and investing in LED. Like we recently, over the last maybe year and a half, we finished some projects with all of the different Walmart parking lots on Oahu, Maui, and Kauai. We did the KCC, LCC, HCC, Maui County, Maui Community College, and Kauai Community College. A lot of the outdoor lighting, and they also did some indoor lighting as well on those projects too. And then UH Manoa Student Housing has done some LEDs. Ko'olina Resort, the street lighting in the Ko'olina Resort area is all LED. They've done OCCC and Halava, the outdoor lighting as well over there. And right now they're kind of in the middle of doing the parking lot expansion at Ala Moana Shopping Center. And all those fixtures for the parking lot should be LED as well. And from what I'm told, the largest energy project ever undertaken by the state of Hawaii, the Department of Transportation at the airport, we're also been involved with that project as well, and they're putting in a ton of LED fixtures into that project too.
Yeah, just as with the airport as an example, we've all had the experience of landing in a plane, and we see that the pilot is aiming between these sets of lights. And they used to be incandescents, and somebody who specializes in airport lighting substituted blue LEDs, and this is many years ago, 3 watts per lamp. Just an astounding change, and this was years ago. It's probably even can be better now. And again, every project that you mentioned, Van, we're getting the light down on the pavement instead of up into the skies. That's helping the astronomy industry too.
Because of the way LED fixtures are really made, I would say almost all of them that I've seen anyway from the manufacturers we work with are all what we call a full cutoff fixture. So it goes straight down just because of the way LEDs put the light out.
And with regard to those fixtures, you know, what seemed impossible, like you were saying just a few years ago, you know, might have seemed like it was unachievable, we're reaching 80 to 100 plus lumens per watt of energy. It was something that is making a lot of skepticism go away. People are a little afraid to go with LED because it's new technology and might have considered it fringe technology, but it's becoming more mainstream now where it's perfectly acceptable to use this kind of technology in very common applications.
Yeah. Not to say that they're all good, because there's still a ton of stuff on the market that are suspect. We just came back from it's been a few months now. We came back from the largest lighting expo in the world, which is Light Fair. It was held in Las Vegas this year, and there is so much companies trying to sell all kinds of LEDs, and we see a lot of them here in Hawaii. Somebody told me that they think that's because we're between here and China, that they stop here first, then they go to the U.S. mainland. I don't think that's really true, but it seems that way though, because there's a lot of there's a lot of product out there that's good. But there's also a lot of product out there that's really bad. So you just have to really do your research and make sure that what you're putting into your facility or even into your home is something that's gonna give you the benefit of what you're paying for. People buy LEDs because of the energy savings and the longer life hours too. So it's good to save energy, but then if you don't get the life hours that you expect out of it, then you're really paying more money than you should have maybe for that light source. So you just have to kind of just watch, and do your research as to what you put in. There's a lot of companies out there right now that all they sell is LED. So when they come into somebody's facility, like you said, you've seen them, a ton of times come into your office, they say, okay, we're going to put an LED here, 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 and that's going to be the best. But that's mostly because those companies, all they sell is LED products, where, if some of the other companies that sell all the different technology, they can say, okay, well, an LED would be great here, but maybe here it'll still be a better return on investment for your company to go with a fluorescent fixture or an electronic HID fixture or what have you. So you still have to really look at all technologies. LED is not really the cure-all thing for all of our lighting needs yet. I think it'll get there because of what we've seen at the expos like Light Fair, but it's just not quite there yet. So you really have to keep an open mind as far as when you're looking at doing any kind of a lighting change. It's not just about LEDs, but it's getting there though.
That's one point, and then you mentioned quality of these companies. When people are asking me about LEDs, I point them to the U.S. Department of Energy, and there's one test called LM79, another called LM80, and one measures the life of the lamp and another measures the color shift. A lot of the less good LEDs start out at one color, and then over life they shift, and you said, wait a minute, I don't want that color. And then there's another test, because the LEDs last so long, called TM21, and that's an extended life test. And I say, make sure that these companies have undergone these tests and that the test results are good. And then finally, the US DOE is also doing what are called caliper tests. I forget what caliper stands for, but they get a whole bunch of the similar LEDs that do the same function, and they test them all at random, and sure enough, about half of the companies fall out. They don't perform as specified. So you really need to look out. We've got about 1 minute left. Any parting wisdom notes here?
Well, like Van was saying, really look into what you're buying. Do some research. A lot of our sales process is really educating the user. So we always tell people, stick with the major brands. Stay away from the offshore, unknown startup type companies, but stick with the major manufacturers, and you shouldn't go wrong.
Yeah. Okay, that about wraps us up. Again, Howard Wiig for Code Green, ThinkTech Hawaii, Van and Dexter Kumano. Thank you very, very much for appearing with me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.